Good afternoon, and I would like to welcome all of you to our speaker series today. And it really, the whole thing is related to our client-based learning initiative, client-based learning and research initiative we started about 3 years ago. And the idea is to bring real-life cases and client experiences right to the classroom. We have been very successful in attracting leading corporations and not-for-profits, as well as major destinations in order to study branding issues, customer satisfaction issues, customer journey analysis issues. And we are very proud today to feature two executives from Abbott Nutrition. Abbott Nutrition is a division of Abbott, a global healthcare company with multiple divisions, and we are focused today on some of their leading brands under the Abbott Nutrition division of Abbott. Right from Columbus, Ohio, we are very proud to present two of our visiting executives today here. Mary Beth Ehrenberg. Dr. Ehrenberg is the Director of Health Policy and Programs at Abbott Nutrition. And in this role, she works with Abbott state and federal government teams in order to integrate issues that relate to industry trade and local and national policies that relate to nutrition and healthcare. She received her PhD from the Ohio State University. With Mary Beth, we are also proud to introduce Mr. Henry Washington. Mr. Washington is a senior brand manager of strategic accounts at Abbott Nutrition. In this capacity, he is responsible for leading major marketing initiatives that relate to some of the leading strategic brands for Abbott Nutrition. And Mr. Washington is going to highlight some of these brands today and really is going to show us and showcase how Abbott Nutrition is rather a very unique industry segment within the healthcare industry. Yeah? He have a vast experience with major Fortune 500 companies. Henry was a student athlete when he finished his undergraduate degree with concentration in biology and a focus on consumer marketing from Akron University. Yeah. He also very active with community outreach, not-for-profits, in the Central Ohio region, including the Ohio Food Bank and the Mid-Ohio Good Hands Ministry. Yeah? We are very delighted to introduce Mr. Henry Washington.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan, for inviting me to speak here with your class. I love spending time with students. I always say students are the best people to engage with. Once you get into our profession, you have to deal with grown-ups, then things get a lot more tumultuous. So really excited to be here. But let me share a little bit with you about how I got to where I am right now. I would like to say that I was very deliberate and very strategic, but a lot of it was really down to a couple things. Just being very focused on doing the best I could do at the task that was in front of me. And then also taking a good look of the landscape and the environment around me and understanding where I fit my skills and quite frankly my interests, and then where I thought there would be really opportunities in the marketplace. So as Dr. Hassan alluded to, I am an alumni of the University of Akron. I had an opportunity to be a student athlete there. I played football, and my background is really a biologist. Along the way, I also picked up a minor in consumer marketing. I know it's a little odd, but I had a really good advisor who said, you have to take these electives, why don't you make them count for something and do something you're interested in? And so it actually ended up really being a great fit for me because initially I thought I wanted to work in a laboratory. I went to work for the Environmental Protection Agency, and then I soon found out that I liked people a little bit, and so I went into the pharmaceutical industry. And I started out actually as a salesperson. I did that for a number of years. I had a number of roles that quickly escalated me through the ranks of selling, and got recruited over to another company and continued to stretch my career in sales, and then was asked to come into the marketing organization. I had a number of marketing roles within Eli Lilly. I started out in marketing operations, and then I did some marketing strategy work, and I did some marketing implementation work. I actually was a market researcher for 3 years and launched a brand. And then I did some global marketing work. And then I had a wonderful opportunity to come over to Abbott, specifically their therapeutic nutrition group, and I'll share a little bit more with you here about that soon. But I had an opportunity to come over and really apply all the things that I had learned up to that point to help them solve some issues related to various issues around reimbursement. So I say all that to say this. Number one, really focus on doing the best job that you can. Opportunities will be there for you. Do a really good job of understanding what's happening around you. Okay, make sure that you're finding fertile opportunities to apply your skills and your interests. And if you put points on the board, somebody will come get you, bottom line. So with that being said, I'm actually going to jump into the presentation. Up front, the first half, I'm going to give you a backdrop on Abbott, and it'll be pretty straightforward. I'll tell you more about Abbott. So it's a wonderful company that produces fantastic products that helps people, and then we'll get into a little bit more around the customer journey, and I'll start to pull in some of the brand element, and I think that part will be a lot more dynamic. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into everything. So again, thank you, Dr. Hassan. Really excited to be here with you, and looking forward to sharing some information with you all about Abbott. And for those of you, if you haven't had an opportunity to do any research, Abbott is a global healthcare company that's really dedicated to fulfilling the promise of human potential in all places, in all areas, in stages of life. At Abbott, we believe that human beings are capable of remarkable things. And we believe that we have the potential to help them not only live longer, but live better. And so with that being said, our belief is we hold the innovation and the desire to help unlock health, because health is the key to all of our potential. And it drives what, quite frankly, we go to work and do every day. So there's a saying at Abbott that says, don't just live longer, live better. And at Abbott, we're all about helping people live their best lives and their fullest lives. So this is our global identity. Build a highly recognizable brand, one that is really customer facing and connects with people. This is a little bit of a shift, I can actually say, since I started with the organization, and to really focus on who matters, and that's people. We have products that are very diverse, and we have products that span from basically birth to death. But again, we feel like our duty is to build innovation and produce products that can help people live richer, fuller lives. So Abbott has been around for a while. Good health is really the starting point for everything that's possible in life. And for more than 125 years, we have been producing advancements in science, technology, nutrition, and it creates more possibilities for all stages of life. Abbott has been delivering and enabling awesome therapy for, like I said, over 125 years. It started here in the late 1800s with a vision from Dr. Wallace to advance science. It expanded into vitamins and got into infant formula. And then, you know, here we are today. Abbott continues to shape new ways and things of bringing health to people all over the world, not just here in the U.S., and through very diverse products and various different technologies. Just to really double click on the point all over the world, Abbott is a global company. 70% of our sales are from outside the U.S. And 50% of those sales are in fast-growing markets like Asia, like China. And 50% of our sales are directly to consumers, which is really different than your typical healthcare company. We have a lot of products, like the ones that I see many of you enjoying today, are sold directly to consumers. And many of those products are in the Abbott Nutrition portfolio, and I'll go a little bit more into that here briefly. So as I said before, Abbott is a very diverse healthcare company. As you can see, we have our medical devices division. We have our established pharmaceuticals division. We have our diagnostics, and we have our nutrition division. Under medical devices, we have our stents. Stents help people who have had the unfortunate event of having a coronary bypass and need some additional support to continue to live richer, fuller lives. And we have our established pharmaceuticals and our diagnostics. There are also going to be some more recognizable brands that I'll share with you under our nutrition portfolio. But as you can see, as I said, we have a very diverse portfolio of products, and they're pretty evenly distributed. So at Abbott, we understand that proper nutrition is really the foundation for living the best and fullest life possible. That's why we develop science-based nutrition. And that's really important for us. It's not just any nutrition. Our products are based in science and evidence. And we have really what we feel a duty to build the best innovation to help people fight whatever condition that they're suffering with. And as I said before, we have products that stretch from birth to death in very many different ways of delivering nutrition orally. We also have tube feeding products as well. When you look at Abbott Nutrition specifically, it's broken down to really these three business units, and I know that might be a little hard to read, so I apologize. But we have our pediatric nutrition, we have our adult nutrition, and we have what's called our performance nutrition. So looking at this slide here, you can see Similac, right? That's one of our brands under our pediatric business unit. We have our infant formula, growing up milk toddler, supplemental nutrition. There's PediaSure as well under pediatric nutrition. We have some of the most trusted brands in the world. Under our adult portfolio, we have Ensure, we have Glucerna, we have healthy snacks. We also have very specific products to help patients who are fighting specific disease, like Nepro for dialysis, and like I said before, Glucerna for diabetes. And we have our performance and our sports nutrition under EAS, Zone, and Myoplex. So this is the portion where hopefully it'll be a little bit more engaging, because I want to start to talk about the consumer. And my understanding is that you guys have been focused a little bit on understanding the patient journey. So I use this simple diagram as an opportunity to really think about if you were a parent, right? And I know most of you are probably a few years away from that, but if you were a parent and you had a child that was not getting the proper nourishment, there aren't too many other ways that you can provide enough nourishment to help that child reach its goals in life of growing and thriving. So here's an illustration of really what it takes. This product here is actually PediaSure Peptide. what it takes or I should say, what you get in these 3 bottles relative to everything that's highlighted over there. So you have an opportunity for a kid who maybe is failing to thrive, or sometimes we call some kids picky eaters, to provide them 3 bottles and really give them the proper nutrition that they need to grow and thrive. So I'm going to double click on, again, the patient journey, but more specifically use some products to talk about the patient journey. Here we have PediaSure. I think maybe many of you have seen PediaSure on a shelf, but it's very similar to Ensure. Again, a kid who has maybe been diagnosed with failure to thrive or lactose intolerance or celiac disease would be what we would say a patient or consumer that needs PediaSure to help meet some of their needs. Then you have Peptide, where you have partially broken down protein to help meet that child's specific needs. So that patient journey is going to be a little bit different because they're suffering maybe from Crohn's disease or cystic fibrosis. And then if we break the proteins down even more and down to lactose-free amino acids for kids who have EOE, who really can't digest or take a lot of other products and have severe allergies, we have EleCare. Each one of these products really represent a different patient journey for that parent. So I'm actually going to use EleCare because really that's probably the most, what I'll say, visceral patient journey, because that child is suffering from a diagnosed disease state. And all of these words here run through a parent's mind when they're thinking about providing or getting or accessing a therapy that's going to help their child to thrive and grow. Stress. As you can imagine, if you have a child who is not able to eat normal foods, stress is going to be number 1, right? EleCare tends to be somewhat expensive. There's coverage. Will my insurance cover it? There's reimbursement here. If it covers it, how will it get reimbursed? Insurance pops out. So these are some of the touch points or pinch points along the patient journey that we as marketers have to understand and think about how we can provide solutions to make sure that mother or father stays connected to our product as they're going throughout their patient journey. So we have a short video. I want to get into adult nutrition because the adult nutrition patient journey is significantly different, but still very important. And we have a video that we're going to play that's going to give you a better backdrop.
We hear about malnutrition in the world news, but it's not just a problem in other countries. Malnutrition is a hidden epidemic in the United States that is under-recognized and under-treated. Malnutrition occurs when the body doesn't get the right balance of nutrients and calories that it needs to stay healthy. This doesn't just happen to people who suffer from hunger or who don't have access to healthy food. Malnutrition can happen to anyone. So, who is at risk? Older adults are at an increased risk because as we age, our dietary needs can change. Our sense of taste and smell may weaken. Digestive systems may slow. Chewing or swallowing problems may develop, and the ability of our bodies to absorb nutrients can decline. People with chronic disease are also at risk. These diseases can reduce appetite, make it physically difficult to shop, cook, and eat, make it hard to remember to eat, and change metabolism and digestion. And their treatment and management can require dietary restrictions, as well as medications that cause appetite-reducing side effects. Malnutrition can lead to hospitalization, and hospitalization itself puts people at risk. Surgeries and other procedures may require that patients follow restricted diets or not eat, Illnesses and procedures can decrease appetite, and people may eat less because they don't like their food choices or are worried or depressed. This can all happen at a time when people may need more nutrients than usual to promote healing and recovery. Living in a nursing home or other long-term care facility also raises risk. Residents are more likely to have multiple chronic diseases and conditions that complicate nutrient needs and the ability to eat. They may also be socially isolated or depressed, lack interest in food, and depend on staff for help with eating. The consequences of malnutrition are serious. Without proper nutrition, our bodies can't stay healthy, fight off disease, or deal with illnesses that we already have. It weakens our immune systems and leaves us vulnerable to infections and slower recovery and wound healing. It also causes weight loss and muscle loss that can lead to frailty, falls and broken bones, disability, loss of independence, and complication of other diseases. Disease-related malnutrition is often associated with protein deficiencies, which can result in loss of muscle mass and strength. This can be very serious and cause or worsen sarcopenia, the progressive loss of skeletal muscle with age, and the consequences are far-reaching. Malnourishment while hospitalized often leads to longer stays, higher infection rates, higher hospital readmission rates, worse outcomes, and death. And the increased economic burden in the U.S. for disease-associated malnutrition in older adults is more than $51 billion each year. Thankfully, malnutrition can be treated. Involving the whole healthcare team in treatment is vital and may include treating the underlying cause of malnutrition if possible, changing the diet to work around restrictions or provide foods with more calories and protein, offering social services like in-home support, meal delivery, community-based nutrition programs, and access to food. People with disease-associated malnutrition or in hospitals or institutions may take oral nutrition supplement drinks for easy access to needed nutrition. In some cases, tube feeding or IV nutrition is necessary. With malnutrition, it's important to remember that people of any body size or type, even those who are overweight or obese, can become malnourished, so it's not the weight alone that counts. Healthcare professionals may not always recognize the signs of malnutrition. The symptoms may be subtle and may be dismissed as a normal part of aging, so start the conversation if you or a loved one experiences sudden unintended weight loss and/or loss of appetite and decreased food intake. Those are the two main symptoms, but people who are malnourished may also experience other symptoms. Request a consultation with a dietitian to be sure that you are getting enough nutrients. If you have a chronic disease that impacts your nutrition, have regular discussions with your healthcare team about your nutritional status. And be sure to ask for a nutrition plan before a hospitalization so you can make sure you don't lose weight during your stay. Discuss a nutrition plan for home before your discharge so you don't lose weight during your recovery. The hospital dietitian can help you connect with community nutrition programs, such as home-delivered meals and nutrition counseling. For more information, visit the following organizations online and visit the Alliance for Aging Research at www.agingresearch.org/malnutrition.
$157 billion. That's a lot of money. Disease-associated malnutrition annually imposes a significant economic burden on our society. It's a really big number. Can anybody think of a family member or anyone that comes to mind that at some point in time may have suffered from disease-associated malnutrition? See, the thing about disease-associated malnutrition is patients are suffering from whatever primary condition that they have. say it's cancer, right? I have an aunt. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. That's a tough cancer to fight. And the first thing I told her was, you need to get started on Ensure. She's my favorite aunt. I love all my aunts, but she's my favorite, right? She always laughed at all my jokes. So I was an advocate for her, okay? And one thing that I knew was going to help her, and even her physician didn't think of, it wasn't top of mind for her oncologist or her radiologist or her surgeon, it was proper nutrition. Your body needs to be at the proper homeostatic level to help heal and fight disease. Cancer isn't the only one. There's many GI issues. The video mentioned frailty. Nutrition is important. And we've done a lot of research. We've done, most recently, some insights research. And one physician summed it up, I think, maybe the best way that I heard. He said, when I have a patient who presents with a condition, say COPD, that patient is choosing between, a lot of times, breathing and eating. So guess what they're going to choose? To breathe. And I feel like disease-associated malnutrition is sucking them into this perilous abyss, and I can't do anything about it. He says, that's where your products come in. That's where Ensure can help get that patient to the proper homeostatic level. So that's the economic side, also tied in with the patient side. So approximately 1 in 5 Medicare patients are readmitted into the hospital within 30 days of being discharged. So you ask, why did I bring that up? Well, when you talk about economic burden, avoiding or reducing avoidable hospital readmissions has been identified as an opportunity for all healthcare systems to reduce costs and really increase the quality of care. I just talked about the economic side of things, but it sucks to be in the hospital. If you were in there, you don't want to go back. And if you're in there, you want to get out as soon as possible. So there's some data out there that says as much as 76% of 30-day readmissions could potentially be reduced. That's a big number. I'm going to get into a little bit more around the strategy and how we apply what we know. And I'll be transparent with you. There's some gaps, and I'll share that as well. But before I get into that, I'm constantly reminded how important what I do, even as a marketer, what I do has on another human being. So just today on my trip over here, I was on a plane. I caught a connecting flight through Atlanta, left Columbus, went to Atlanta. I got on the plane, and typically I'm pretty reserved. I like what I like. I don't interact with a lot of people, particularly early in the morning. I got up at like 3:30 this morning to get here. But nonetheless, the gentleman asked me, he said, "Hey, how are you?" I said, "I'm fine." He's like, "What brings you to DC?" I said, "Well, I'm going to do one of the things I like most, and that's talk to students." And he says, "That's awesome, right?" He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I work for Abbott Nutrition, and I'm a marketer there. And we have some products that you may have heard of. There's Similac, there's PediaSure, and there's Ensure." He says, "Yeah, I know about Ensure." And I said, "Really?" So this gentleman, he was, I don't know, middle age, let's call him 40-ish, fairly lean. Wasn't what I would think of as an Ensure patient. Definitely didn't fit the profile of, these two lovely people here. This guy says, "I know all about your product." He says, "I was a combat veteran. And I came back from war, he says, and I lost 70 pounds. At one point in time, I was 190. And I dropped down to 120 within 2 weeks. I said, that's astounding. He said, well, a significant portion of that was because I lost my leg. Look, sure enough, he had a prosthetic. And he said, I had shrapnel in my bowels. He said, I couldn't eat anything. And it was your product that essentially kept me alive. And I'm like, first of all, thanks for your service. And I'm glad that at some point in time, somewhere, some physician or other ACP received a message that said this person needs to be on Ensure. He said, I had a better outcome because of your product. So, you know, many of us are, you know, business students, but never forget, you have an opportunity many times in what you do to connect your brand with consumers. And in my case, I have the fortune of really impacting people's lives. So let me talk about our strategy. We have what we call the downstream model, okay? And it's really predicated on making sure that a patient engages in what I'll call brand relevance, okay, and understands that they need to be on Ensure. And that starts typically because they have a disease, all right, or they have a condition or a situation that causes them to go to the hospital or an office visit. And what I usually say that's a moment of truth. There's something that happened that said, I need to go see a doctor, or unfortunately I get admitted into the hospital. And while they're there, they get diagnosed with malnutrition. Okay, somebody looks at them, they do an assessment, they're in the hospital, perhaps they got screened. If they're in an office visit, perhaps they use a screening tool, or they diagnose them with malnutrition. And what we know to be true is that with the HCP recommendation, patients are likely to go purchase our product at shelf. If you reflect back earlier in the presentation, what I said is, I think 70% of our brands are directly to consumers. Our products are found on shelf. You don't need a prescription. We rely on interaction with a healthcare professional. They understand the relevance, and they have a conversation with either a loved one, a caregiver, or the patient directly, which motivates them to go purchase our product at shelf. It's pretty dynamic, okay? That's what we call the downstream model. Do we have direct-to-consumer advertising? Absolutely. Yes, we do. But what we know now is that it's an accelerant of our downstream model. I don't imagine many of you have seen Ensure commercials. I mean, it would be if you were watching TV late, or maybe you've caught one on YouTube or Glucerna. But yes, we do have DTC advertisement. But again, they help drive some of the challenges that we have. The first challenge, number one, is situating Ensure in the mind of the HCP to really broaden and grow our market. We've actually been doing fairly well this year. We had some challenging years, but this year we're actually doing very well. But one of the things that we came to understand about our brand, and I'm going to pick on Ensure because it's actually doing well now, is that, well, let me ask the question. When I say Ensure, somebody give me an adjective. What do you think of? Anybody? It's the first thing that comes to your mind.
With certainty.
uncertainty. Okay. Sickness. Security. Any other ones? Okay. So let me share with you what our market research tells us. Old, death, and dying. Old, death, and dying. When people think of Ensure, and this includes many healthcare professionals, they think of old, death, and dying, right? The brand has been around for a long time. And guess what? Old, death, and dying, I mean, that's sticky. If I see an old person who's dying, it sure comes to mind. I gotta use this for them, right? I gotta keep this disease from dragging them into a perilous abyss. But guess what? What's the challenge with that? Number one, you don't have too many repeat users, right? Number two, it's a very small market, okay? It's a very small market. But there's a sweet spot as well, right? I'll be the first to tell you, that gentleman I spoke to on the plane this morning, he's not our target consumer, okay? He's not. While Ensure helped him from a marketing perspective, again, the number is really too small. So I gotta expand my market. How do I do that? I gotta understand what the insight is. What I have up here is Ensure and Live, right? And the reason why I brought this guy with me is because it's really exciting. Maybe it's just exciting for me because I'm a quirky guy. I'm a biologist by trade, but it has data behind it. And I love data because what data allows me to do is to go have a compelling discussion with a healthcare professional on why they need to do something. Now, I could have that discussion without the data, but they're going to challenge me. They're going to say, Henry, I make data-based decisions. I need to understand how to practice medicine. That's how I was trained. What the dietitian might say is, hey, food first, right? Love dietitians to death. They're going to say food first. But now I have data, okay? And again, this is tough to see here. But what we did was a randomized placebo-controlled trial. It was the gold standard of clinical trials. And what we saw with this particular product was that it actually reduced death. It reduced mortality. And it reduced readmissions in a number of subpopulations. Now that allows me as a marketer to get really creative and start to package my message differently, because now I can have a data-oriented discussion to say, hey, here's what you need to do for these types of people. It's not only the death and dying, but it's these people who have a condition that might be more likely to be readmitted into the hospital. Glucerna also has data. Glucerna is a product for diabetics. It's been shown to reduce HbA1c. But we also have a problem with Glucerna, okay? If you talk to a diabetic, or if you know a diabetic, a lot of them would tell you that they understand what their goal is, right? Their goal is to maintain their HbA1c, maintain their blood sugar, keep it within a range, okay? But like all of us, they want to eat what they want to eat. But unfortunately, their disease doesn't allow them to do that. And we haven't been able to position Glucerna at that right time, right? If you think about a diabetic's maybe daily patient journey, they get up, they have their meals, and at some point along the time they say, man, I need to go and grab a bag of chips, or I need to go grab a candy bar because I'm hungry. We haven't been able to fit Glucerna in with understanding where that moment of truth is. And then there's some other challenges in terms of the product profile and providing calories and other things as well. There's a couple things, and where ultimately I'm going to drive to, and I'm going to ask everyone help, is to help us understand possible ways of making sure consumers stay connected to our brands. We fundamentally believe, number one, right, the first challenges I was talking about, that's brand relevance, that's growing the market. Okay, hopefully we're gonna solve that, but I need to do a better job of keeping the people I already have. I gotta make sure the people who have already engaged our brands, who have purchased a product, right? Another quick story here, I shamelessly, and my director did the same thing, it just happened to me the other day. I was in the store, I was walking down an aisle, and I saw an elderly gentleman walk down the Ensure aisle. And I stopped what I was doing, took a step back, and I said, wow, I want to watch this guy, but not in a creepy way, right? You know? So I said, okay, what is he gonna do? And he looked up, he looked down, there's generic products, my competition, there's Boost, that's another challenge that we have, right? There's Boost that have competition, it's not just Ensure. He looked at all of our brands, and I wanted to shout out, Choose in Life, right? Choose in Life, that's the best one for him, but didn't want to mess with his moment of truth. And he did. He picked up in Live. And I'm like, I'll be doggone it, right? He got in Live. A little bit of backdrop. In Live comes in a 4-pack, and it's the same price as our 6-pack, but it's a 4-pack, okay? It has a different margin profile than our other products, though, right? It comes in 4 versus 6, but he chose that product. And I wanted to say, man, what made you choose Ensure in Live? And he put a few of them in his basket, and I saw him go throughout the store. I went and picked up a few other groceries. Believe it or not, I didn't follow him, but I watched him go to the checkout counter, and I actually saw them ring it up. I had to see them actually ring it up because, see, man, maybe he would change his mind, okay? So, I just call that ethnographic research. I didn't follow the guy home or anything like that, right? But I was really interested in understanding there are so many things that had to go right in order for that to happen, right? He had a condition. I don't know what it was. Or somebody in his family had a condition. Somebody had a conversation with him, an HCP, a dietitian, a physician, a nurse, and he remembered it. And he went to the supermarket and he chose Ensure and Live out of all these other products. And he put it in his basket and he went home. There were so many places where things could have broke down. And this brings me to the road to better compliance, right? For some, the road to adherence is a long journey, right? Like I just told you about, that gentleman had a lot of twists and turns. Patients often travel on a rocky road that's full of obstacles and travels and pitfalls. So understanding where individuals are in their journey and how they got there is really crucial. And to do that, we have to know a little bit about what's likely to happen next. So what I've come to understand over my career is that compliance is really determined by the baggage patients bring into the experience. And what I mean by that is everybody got to where they are because of something, right? They didn't, 9 times out of 10, they don't want to be there. Probably 10 times out of 10. So there's something, there's some baggage, right, that they're bringing with them to their experience. And a lot of those things, that baggage, really are significant barriers to helping them maintain compliance. So let me share a little bit more around what that means. If you are let's pick on, I don't want to say pick on, but let's use diabetes. So a type 2 diabetic might be on sulfonylurea might be on a product called metformin. They might be on another product to help manage their blood sugar. And they're really focused on weight loss, so they might be looking for some other products. All of those things are baggage. And then now I have to put my product in with all of those other things that they're deciding about that are at the forefront of their mind. Okay, now somebody said, and I don't know who, some smart HCP said, you should probably take Glucerna, go buy in Glucerna. But the trigger along there is all of the baggage that they have, all of those decisions that they're making. There's personal beliefs about their own health. Do I really need it? Is this just general therapy? So understanding those things as a marketer is really, really important. So here are some things that we know to be true. The need transcends the disease state, okay? Their immediate need is above all else. Consumers assign, really, in ONS stands for oral nutritional supplements, which is Ensure, products to a specific function, regardless of the nutritional profile. Each one of our products have a different nutritional profile, different proteins, different fat profile. But for the most part, consumers will lump ONS into one basket and say, this is going to help me do this. So I don't necessarily choose amongst all of these different iterations of your brand, okay? So that's why I was really interested in understanding why that gentleman chose Ensure and Live over Base, right? HCP recommendation and endorsement are fundamental to adult and pediatric nutrition equity. This is true. I want to say, I heard somewhere in the building that patients are 7 times more likely to be compliant if their healthcare professional tells them, you need to go do this. You need to go get Ensure or Glucerna. Openness to oral nutritional supplements is correlated with the severity of health and its role. So obviously, if you have a condition that's really tough to treat, I could use the example of the EOE patient. You're a mom, and all your child can take is Elecare. Well, they have a very severe condition, and ONS is really going to be correlated to that. So each individual's routine drives ONS, oral nutritional supplementation occasion, with poor health status, leading to a greater focus on supplement versus replacement. So this is kind of long-winded, but it's still a kind of an insight. What we know to be true is what a person does in their routine activity day to day, and how that correlates to their health status really assigns, is this a supplement or a replacement? Where we want to get to is actually that this is adjunct therapy. That's what we're trying to do with our messaging to patients and to healthcare professionals. So I've been talking at you quite a bit, and I have an ask. And that ask is, can you identify methods of evolving what we call our transitions of care strategy? As patients move throughout their healthcare journey, can we connect with patients/consumers in different points throughout their patient journey? So here's a very generic patient journey for therapeutic nutrition. You have the visit here to a specialist or HCP. That patient may have gone to the hospital. They may have gone to an outpatient clinic if they were an oncology or dialysis patient. They may have actually went to an alternate site, so home health care or a skilled nursing facility, and then they're at home. And then can they get to their brand through retail, or do we have what we call home medical equipment interaction? So this is a very generic patient journey, but as you can see, there's a lot of little areas there. There's lots of little touch points where things can be enhanced For each patient journey for the individual brands is going to be different. And I touched on that earlier, right? You have PediaSure there, all right? That's very different than Elecare, very different than Ensure, very different than Glucerna, very different than a Glucerna bar. You'll have to understand the conditions and how they interplay with the various healthcare settings, some of which I highlighted here. Example, does a patient go home? Do they go to an alternate site? And are there any gaps in their nutrition profile or the nutrition care process? The base question is, how do you keep consumers connected and adherent throughout their patient journey? How can you help build a stronger consumer brand relation for these brands? And I've picked out 5 here. Picked out Ensure, picked out Glucerna, and the sub-brand Hunger Smart, Glucerna bars, Elecare, and PediaSure. So that's my question, that's my ask, and here's some resources. To assist with understanding the patient journey, between myself and Dr. Ahrensberg, we'll make sure that you have access to all of these resources. ABMs, BMs, healthcare professional sales representatives, dietitians, the Abbott shopper marketing team. They're the ones who actually interact with the big stores, the Walmarts, the Krogers. Consumers indirectly will find out a source that will potentially connect you to some actual consumers. Healthcare professional, sales reps, retail reps. All of these will be resources that you'll be able to tap into to help pull together the patient journey and understand if there are opportunities for us to make sure our brands are a lot more relevant at those moments of truth. So with that being said, that's the end of my presentation. I'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Henry, very much for really giving us an overview. First of all, thank you for enlightening us about your career evolution, but also where the Abbott Nutrition stands within the healthcare paradigm or complexities as a sector of caring for people from cradle to grave. I like that. You enlighten us about the economic impact of the malnutrition and the urgency in taking a more proactive role. And as a leader in the industry, Abbott Nutrition is definitely taking a proactive role in that respect and reaching out to consumers. And you shared some anecdotal evidence of ethnography, consumer research, and other methods that you have been using in order to sort of tap on the pulse of the market and understand what it takes to strengthen the alliance between the brand and your target audience. You mentioned a lot of the direct-to-consumer, and you mentioned a lot the downstream type of, through the channel type of distribution network. And I think you added a lot of information in that direction. And the mandate that you have, and I'm trying to recap, that you are giving the students here, sort of the scope of work statement is how to further analyze the consumer journey as it relates to each one of these brands, and to identify the connecting points and how to strengthen that alignment between the target audience consumer groups and each and every one of the given brands. So thank you very much. And I think the table now is turned around to sort of, and they are seated by teams, by the way. They have already been assigned to 7 teams. And it is the deliberation time now. It is your moment of truth now with the client to ask questions or raise any comments, observations, whether you heard of these brands, and I'm sure all of us, how many of us heard of at least of one of these brands? So there's a very high level of awareness here on the audience in that respect. So The questions are going to start from you now. Do you have any questions? You have the client here. You are not going to see Henry and Mary Beth until December, when your journey terminates at your final presentation. Obviously, there will be opportunities to interact with them by email. Let me re-emphasize that the client-based learning and research initiative here is intended to really bring real-life issues, marketing challenges that face clients, real-life clients. This is a precious experience that you will cherish probably throughout your career, whether you end up being part of this very high-growth industry or not. But the intention is to give the client a different set of lenses. And Mr. Washington really articulated it best when we were talking a little earlier, and he said, we have been at Abbott so zoomed on each one and every one of these brands, and we would like to zoom out and sort of reflect and get sort of an out-of-the-box points of views, and the student's perspective here is therefore very valuable to them because it helps them to zoom out. It helps them to use a different sets of lenses. It helps them to think out of the box, if you will, and it helps them to gain a better insight into what's happening in the marketplace. So once again, thank you, and I think this is going to be, I'm going to be the mic holder here, and if you have any comment, question, observation, there is no wrong question, there is no bad question. The wrong and the bad thing is not to raise the question now. So let's open the questions now for any observations. And
please ask any questions.
Yeah.
If there's a question I might not know, I'll probably phone a friend,
yeah,
Dr. Ahrensberg, and
please,
between the two of us, if we don't know, we'll make it up.
Okay, introduce yourself and raise your question. Thank you.
Okay, sure. My name is Priyanka. Thank you guys so much for coming and presenting and talking to us. And you mentioned the competitors a little bit. So could you talk about how the competitors place themselves within the customer journey and how they differ or are similar to how you guys go about it?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, right? So I didn't elaborate a lot on the competition. And for the most part, our main competitor on the adult side is Nestle Health. And the interesting thing is this is what many of our customers would categorize as there's no differentiation, right? I can use Boost or I can use Ensure to really treat the same condition. Obviously, we feel a little different, particularly with our product and some of the innovations that we have associated with it. Now, on the pediatric side, you have Nestle is there. You also have Mead Johnson and Nutrition for some of the specialty brands. But again, it's viewed as a commoditized market. So your question specifically about the patient journey, I can tell you what we know to be true about the market. Not necessarily this may or may not tie to the journey. So Nestle, right? So they're a retail juggernaut. Right, we know that we cannot match Nestle dollar for dollar in the retail space. They're huge, right? They'll crush us there. What we understand is that we have a lot of equity with the Abbott name with healthcare professionals. And keep me honest here, if there's anything else you want to add, Mary Beth, please do. And we try to leverage that equity to drive that HCP recommendation for our brand. And and I hate to say this, right now, hope, and the reason why I hate to say that, because I always tell young marketing talent, hope is not a strategy, okay? Hope is not a strategy, but we hope that that patient, because they experienced either really on a tray when they were in the institution or through a recommendation, right, from a physician or a nurse or someone, that will drive additional brand relevance. We do audits to understand from our customers, we ask physicians, what's the #1 brand that you think of? We do market research, one-on-one, in-depth interviews, and many times what she'll tell us is, I split them. Or, you know, what he'll say is, well, it just kind of depends on taste. So that's a long-winded, really kind of response. I don't know if you have anything else to build on that.
Well, we do certainly reach out to healthcare professionals, and one of the ways we hopefully differentiate ourselves, because the products are very similar, is through the services that we offer. So we do a lot of healthcare professional education. Some of the efforts that I've been engaged with are around educating healthcare professionals on the problem of malnutrition, helping them identify those patients that would most benefit. Because as Henry shared, there is an economic piece, there's a patient quality of life piece. If somebody feels better because of nutrition, they're going to do better. So we do a lot around the education piece, and we work to see that as a differentiation, but it's a difficult process.
No, that's a very good build, Mary Beth. So another thing, we do brand equity drivers or brand equity audits. We want to understand in the minds of our customers and HCPs what's important. So when you do an audit, you do all these factor analysis and these driver analysis, and then okay, education is really important. Like, who was seen as the leader in education, or product profile, cost. So we understand really what drives brand equity, and we try to own those. We slipped a little bit, right, on kind of owning what we'll call nutrition expertise. Nestle has been targeting some of our customers in the institution, particularly within surgery, because they understood that surgery can really drive institutions to prefer one product or the other. The other thing that I left out that's really, really, really important, and it makes things a lot more complicated, is so we have to contract to be on a hospital formulary. So the majority of our business, again, when you think about the downstream model, is right now is coming from the hospital. In order to have our products in the hospital, they want pricing, okay? And so a lot of times it's a sword fight between us and Nestle, and we try to play up some other non-branded attributes to say, this is why you should have Abbott products. So we have Abbott hospitals and Nestle hospitals. So those are a little bit of some of the challenges that we have as it relates to kind of making sure that we're there at that moment of truth in that patient journey.
My name's Benjamin. Thank you guys again for coming. So it seems to me like a lot of the branding you talked about, you think of a lot of the products that Abbott offers, like you take these products so that you can eventually stop taking these products. So like you would, you take these products if you have a sickness or you have a disease or something. And so what kind of strategies do you guys use to, I guess, help build that allegiance to the brand that could persist even after, after someone gets healthier, ideally, once they start taking your product? Like, is that an issue for you guys? Good
question, right? Because there is a point where you have to be believable, and so you're right. Right now, we have clinical trials, right, that actually say you take these products for this period of time, these are the outcomes you'll get. So that's where we can, quote unquote, I guess, anchor our discussion or our claim to. But with any disease, yeah, you want to treat to a point where that patient gets better. I would say that's not a challenge that's unique of a lot of pharma companies, okay? So what you have to do is grow the market. And you can grow it a number of different ways. You can grow it by lengthening therapy, which is really what you're referring to, or get more consumers. So we're really focused on getting more consumers. And what we have playing in our favor is the aging population. It's exploding, okay? So that's our strategy right now. It's really focused on growing the market by getting new users?
For diseases such as diabetes, I mean, that's oftentimes something, it's a chronic disease, so somebody's going to potentially have that for a very long time, usually for the rest of their life. So in that case, you're really looking at how can a product like Glucerna, as Henry outlined, help them deal with their diet better, because it really, by providing some of the science behind it, which includes slow digesting carbohydrates so they don't get a quick blood glucose spike and then crash down after it, they can take it as a snack and they're not going to see that high blood glucose as a result of it. They can take it as an evening snack, as a morning snack. They can take it instead of lunch. So it provides a way for them to help manage their diabetes in an effective way without having to rely just on their insulin or their other medications to deal with that. So for some of the products, it could be more of a lifelong or a much longer journey. I would say also for older adults, granted that Ensure is going to be helpful potentially to get them over the hump, so to speak, but we also know for folks that are living a long time, you know, it may be something that they just incorporate into their diet because it's easier for them to prepare, it's easier for them to use than to take something else. And again, from a snack standpoint or something like that, can be very useful. So it depends on the situation. A lot of them, yes, it's up and down, but some of them, they're going to continue to use that product. Clearly, PediaSure, after they age up, they hopefully are onto something else. But the other product that Henry mentioned, EleCare, so those are for kids that have some really severe gastrointestinal issues. Hopefully they get better, but some of those kids are on those products for a very long time.
Hi, my name is Shoshana. My question is, you talked earlier that you did a study and said that many people associate like death and aging with your products. Do you find that you try to like get rid of that perception with your products and make it more about the products themselves, or do you embrace that idea and try to just incorporate your products into that, because it can be a negative connotation to try to sell around a product that just reminds people of like dying?
So what we're doing a lot better job of now is getting to the insight. And that insight is you know it when you see it because it makes you feel, or you hear it because it makes you feel a certain way about something. All right, like for instance, you see the Apple sign, it makes you feel a certain way, right? You see Starbucks, it makes you, somebody nailed the insight in tying that brand to a product experience. We weren't there yet. So the insight is not death and dying, right? We don't want to be there. But what we actually are toying around with is the ideal. We know we need to get to a therapy. And so the challenge is, to Benjamin's point, therapies, for the most part, they subside. What we have recently discovered is our challenge is between food and therapy, okay? And if we're in the food lane, that's not a place that we can exist for a long time, because guess what? People like to eat. And I'm not just saying they like to eat, but it's a joyous occasion many times. You know, I know chocolate cake makes me happy. It makes me feel like a certain way, okay? I can't compete with that, not with Ensure, okay? A couple of our products taste good, but I can't compete with that. So the insight that we're toying around, we haven't completely nailed it yet, is it allows people to get back to what they want to do or enjoy most. And yes, eventually that duration goes away. But that's not to say that they won't come back, okay? But yeah, so absolutely we're trying to get away from death and dying. And I would say, you know, we've been pretty successful with that this year. We know that we have to be a lot more intentional and more successful if we want to grow the market and hit our long-term plans, quite frankly.
Hi, thanks again for coming. My name is Jocelyn, and my question also relates a little to how do you manage to keep your client and get away from a bad image, because I wanted to know, how did you manage to get rid of a bad image when Abbott Laboratories had to face this whole issue with Depakote and illegal marketing of some drugs? Because all your positioning is around health and living your life a good way. So I wanted to know.
again, when you think of brands, you still have the Abbott brand. I can't really provide a lot of detail as to the thought that went behind being intentional in focusing on life. I can give you some of Henry's hypothesis, right? When you look at how diverse we are, you know, from a company perspective, okay, we have our, you know, nutrition division, we have our diagnostics, we have our diabetes. So we're very diverse. So you need something that's going to resonate across all of those very diverse consumers, right, and very diverse customers. The one thing that we can fundamentally say is that we're anchored in innovation, and you know, we're known to be a global company that's really focused on, like I said, products from birth to death. So again, Henry's hypothesis, somebody had a bright ideal, and that ideal said, we're really in this to help people do what they want to do, and that's live life better. Okay, it's really inspiring. If you have an opportunity to go to the Abbott website and click on some of the videos, a lot of them are really focused on people doing amazing things, jumping off buildings, you know, scuba diving at great depths, and there are a lot of stories. I think Abbott actually encourages people to submit stories about doing phenomenal things. Abbott believes humans are capable of phenomenal feats, but you can only do that if you're healthy. And the way they're trying, well, we are trying to tie our equity to Abbott is helping people understand the importance that you need to be healthy, and we can help you do that.
Hi, my name is Jack. I know we've been talking a lot about like the elderly like market and kind of trying to bring people back to the health to prolong their lives, but in terms of your EAS products and like the people like your market that is involved with athletics and like fitness and very active, how would you say that you would prepare to compete with? There's just so many competitors, so I know that's pretty tough, but how would you like try to compete with them?
If you want to talk about a commoditized market with a lot of noise, I've never seen so much noise in a category. I mean, there's literally thousands of products that you can choose from, and what they are doing a better job of, and I'm choosing my words correctly because they've not been really successful because of the challenge of really saturated market, is connecting the science, right? One thing that Abbott can say is that their products are science-based. Now, will that appeal to everybody? Will that appeal to maybe this population? I don't know, right? But we do know that we've been too broad in our marketing, and we haven't been focused in on who would really be willing to pay for the science and the value that it brings. And so they're being a lot more focused. What you'll see, actually, if you go out on EAS, you'll see the new brand architecture. You'll see sort of a new focus on a very competitive professional, and what I mean by professional athlete, I use that in terms of like a professional who's going to work every day, and they're an athlete, not a professional athlete, even though we do have some, but a professional who is an athlete. That's what I should have said. But a professional who is an athlete who wants to get the most out of their performance. Okay, so someone who is biking like every morning, or someone who's lifting weights and then they go to work. That's a very different consumer, right, than the 18-year-old football player who just wants to get jacked. Okay? So they've been very, very targeted. And if I'm not mistaken, somebody can go out there and look, I think there's actually a section that you can go click and buy discontinued product. They're saying, listen, that's not us anymore. Okay. So that's about as much as I can share with you. No, if you want to know any more, I can put you in contact with the right people. But no, they have a significant challenge, I think they're doing some really phenomenal work there.
The other thing they're doing to try to differentiate themselves is really focus on the quality piece, because unfortunately in that market space, as Henry said, there's a lot of noise. There are a lot of different folks out there with products, and they're at all levels in terms of quality. You've got some that are making outrageous claims with really nothing behind it, and even what they're producing may not be what you think you're getting. So Abbott, as given to our scientific heritage, has always been about, we have claims that we believe that we can stand behind, and what you buy is what you're getting, and you're not going to get something else. So from a policy side, we've had a lot of issues with that sometimes, because some people interpret that that these products have things in them they shouldn't, and we really do a lot to work with some of the quality organizations that really certify products to make sure that we are giving you what you think you're buying.
Hi, my name is Mariana. Thank you for coming today. So I guess I have some questions that connect to the same point. So I'm curious about your corporate social responsibility and how your consumers, how much do they care about, because malnutrition is a very important issue in developing nations. And so I guess my question is, how do consumers, how much do they care about this issue? And how would their journey improve if you could market your product with having, efforts in developing nations?
Abbott is a global company, with most of our products sold outside the U.S. In terms of the issue of malnutrition, as Henry talked about, we're really talking about the disease-associated piece, which is different than something that would be caused by lack of adequate nutrition or lack of adequate nutrients because of economic situations or famine or war or some of those other problems. But Abbott does a lot in that social responsibility piece, and if you go on our website, you'll see that when there are natural disasters, we're working very closely with a lot of the relief efforts to provide our products to those organizations that then distribute them. We don't go directly in terms of providing relief, because unfortunately, that gets very difficult. You got to make sure that what you're giving is going to the people that really need it. And in the international arena, you're much better off to work with agencies that have a long history of getting that aid there. Otherwise, you can send it over and who knows what happens to it. So we really do work a lot with those international relief agencies to provide that type of support. We also work in terms of helping with some in-country efforts. So, for example, in Haiti, which has had significant problems in terms of malnutrition, some of our scientists work there to help them use products that are food products that they have, primarily peanuts, to develop a peanut paste that they could actually use, produce that there. We help them with the technology to actually make it in country, provide it to their citizens. So we're doing a number of things from a humanitarian standpoint, and it's really on that broader social responsibility area.
I have a follow-up related question here. Abbott is a global healthcare company, a global player in a truly global industry. I believe you mentioned that 50% of your growth is coming out of emerging markets. You are competing with a global leader in that respect, Nestle. Nestle outsources crazy everywhere. To what extent you outsource your manufacturing capabilities? You mentioned the experience in Haiti. Is that an isolated incident, or do you manufacture or assemble any of your distribution? Does your production follow your distribution, globally speaking, or you are more based in Columbus, Ohio, and everything grows out of Columbus, Ohio? I think it will be enlightening for the students to know how global is Abbott.
So as I identified, the help that we provided in Haiti, that was actually, again, it was social responsibility. So we were helping them develop their own products that they could use, and it was not from an economic standpoint for us to benefit necessarily. But in terms of global development, I would say the headquarters for Abbott is actually in North Chicago, Illinois. The headquarters for Abbott Nutrition is in Columbus, Ohio, which is where Henry and I are both from. But we do have a global market and a global footprint. So we have R&D facilities in Columbus, Ohio. We also have R&D facilities in, I think, 2 or 3 places else around the world. I know there's a huge R&D facility in Singapore. We've really come to realize that when you talk about these products, you need to align the products with the needs of the local markets. So we can't come up with ideas back here in Columbus, Ohio, and think they're going to work in India or Thailand or Vietnam. So we have a lot of work to do in-country analysis, both in terms of from a marketing standpoint as well as from an R&D standpoint. And Abbott at this point has kind of centers around the globe in terms of both management as well as R&D to really best target our products to that local market.
Outsourcing is oftentimes associated with price competitiveness. You mentioned that pricing might be of a challenge, meeting a mass marketer, if you will, as Nestle. To what extent the price competitiveness and the outsourcing dovetail on each other in order to not only bring the latest in science nutrition, but competitively?
So I would say we have facilities around the globe, but we don't outsource our manufacturing. We really are, I mean, we've got in-country people working in that.
Yeah.
We are working within our own facilities to manufacture.
So full quality control over that.
It really is, because that's not, I mean.
What differentiates you from
Yes.
the rest?
And when you talk about the types of products that we have, if it's infant formula or it's a product for an older person or a product for a sick person, that's not the time where you want to have quality issues. So it's really, really important for us to maintain that quality all the way through and have a way to manage that. But that often means, you know, you're trying to bring those local facilities up to the quality standards.
Up to standards,
that we,
yeah, absolutely.
Hi, my name is Ricky. My question's more about your target markets, I guess. So from the products you presented, it seems like there's an elderly market and more of an adolescent market. Has there been any research toward, I guess, the people that are the step right above malnutrition, whether it be the 18 to 25 range or midlife, just the people who aren't really quite diagnosed with the issue yet?
And we look at adult from 18 plus, and we've done some core segmentation to understand, number one, size of prize, right, and then relevance. And then how do you, and what I mean by relevance is how will you get to the point where you can truly activate your consumer to do something. So intuitively, when you think about, again, I'm just focusing on Ensure, and even you can probably put Glucerna in this bucket as well. When you think about the younger, let's just say 18 to 40, typically they're healthy, right? And so while that might be a good target for maybe performance nutrition, for therapeutic nutrition, the relevance isn't there unless perhaps they're fighting with a particular disease. We've also named our categories, and what we really focus on is our what we call awakened consumer, and it's one. I think it's awakened. It might be fighting, so don't hold me to that. So, but anyway, whether it's awakened or fighting, we know that, again, it's tied to a condition that they want to treat. And on the pediatric side, again, I think just from an age perspective, you age out. And I think that's probably the best way to kind of think about that consumer set. When you get to 18, or you get to hopefully you get to a point, if you're PediaSure and it's failure to thrive, that you're starting to consume enough, and you're either, number one, you get beyond adolescence, and your epiphyses is closed and you're done kind of maturing and growing, so there's no need for PediaSure, or either you hopefully have taken enough nutrients in to get you back on the appropriate growth rate trajectory and rate as well. So that's kind of, short answer, well, I would say long answer, it could probably come in short, yes, we do. But what we know about our younger consumers, particularly for our adult market, the brand relevance isn't quite there, again, unless it's tied back to a particular disease.
And I think part of that relates to, as Henry said, you've got that group you're talking about, which really is generally healthy. Our products have, they can be providing complete and balanced nutrition. They've got carbohydrate, protein, fats, vitamins, and minerals. Some people can live for years on products like Ensure or PediaSure, and they do, if they've got a certain condition that they need that. But if you've got a relatively healthy person and they're choosing between food and our products, they're most often going to choose food because that, as Henry said, provides other things, be it enjoyment or time with family or whatever. It would be different than like a dietary supplement, which would not be providing any carbohydrate, protein, calories. If you're just getting a vitamin B supplement, you can take that. You really don't need to change anything in your diet. If you're going to add Ensure to your diet, it's going to replace something or add additional calories. So for that middle group, they're usually not looking at replacing calories. But that being said, I will say there are certainly a lot of physicians and dietitians and others that in a healthcare environment, and particularly the physicians when they have long hours, that they'll take some Ensure because they can't get to the cafeteria is closed and they can't get anything to eat. Or I would be saying the same thing for myself, for kids or others. If you're on the go and you need something that has complete and balanced nutrition, then our products are it. But that's not generally the need of that market. They're not really looking for that.
So you know what, this actually just popped into my mind when Mary Beth was talking. We have actually looked at the younger consumer for weight loss, right? Which, again, when we just look at, big size of prize, but there's so much noise in there, there's so many choices, we chose not to go after that consumer. But yes, I forgot, we intentionally looked at the younger consumer for potentially weight loss because, like Mary Beth said, you can't take, well, you shouldn't be taking or drinking Ensure and eating 3 meals. You're replacing that Ensure with something.
Or you've got somebody that has really high needs, so they need those extra calories and that extra nutrition. Is there a question over here?
Well, I really would like to take this moment to thank Henry and thank Mary Beth. Thank you so much